It was November 15th, 1896, and the first transmission of electricity from Niagara Falls Power Company was sent out to Buffalo, New York. So what you're looking at is the inside, some of those first hydro generating electric, whatever you call them. But it was really interesting because once it became apparent that there was a great energy source that could be harnessed in the Niagara, and they had the electricity to transform the hydropower potential energy to electricity, they had another problem, and that was transmission. For a little bit in the late 1800s, they were trying to do it through direct current, and it couldn't go very far. Maybe a mile was stretching it, and Buffalo was 25 miles away. So near the end of the 1800s, Tesla and I think Westinghouse started to use AC to transmit power and actually gave them a lot more distance. And they were finally able to achieve that by 1900s. And Buffalo, so I lived there for 3 years, so I'm a little biased. I like Buffalo. It's known also as the City of Lights, which you might wonder, why the heck is it the City of Lights? It's Buffalo. Like, it's just little Buffalo. But at 1900, it was the 8th largest city by population in the US because it was poised at this location where the canals were coming through. They were close to Niagara for the electricity and for the industry. But they hosted the World Fair, and so the whole city was lit up in a time where like gas lamps were still common. So the reason I bring this story up, you're like, am I in the wrong session? No, you're in the right session. We're here to talk about data analytics with the Google Suite. But I really like this story, not just because I was a proud Buffalonian by adoption, but I do think there's a lot of parallels to be drawn with electricity and data today. The twofold challenge that they had with harnessing this huge potential of electricity generated at Niagara Falls was twofold. The first was transmission. How do I move all this vast potential energy to where it can be used? But then once it's transmitted there, that's not enough, right? Early on, a lot of the applications were literally just streetlights and industry. So like there weren't toasters, there weren't computers, obviously. There weren't all these things. So it really has been an unfolding effort of the last 120 years. Now we have electric cars, right? And that's transforming that potential into an actual value add energy that we can use in many creative ways. And that challenge goes on. But I really think there's strong parallels to be had with data. But before we get too far, you might ask, who is this person standing at the front who claims he's a Buffalonian by adoption? I'm Adam Pasternack. I'm actually a Colombian. I'm from Columbus. That's where I live now. I work at Improving. Some of my colleagues were here presenting today. A little bit about me. I've worked for several different companies. I've done some work at Huntington. I've worked on a project for L3. I worked at Patel a little bit. I'm currently an improving consultant at Wendy's, and that's what I'll be sharing today, my experience at Wendy's implementing the Google Analytics suite across all their digital platform. I'm also a big learning nerd. I was a philosophy major, so I can never stop learning. My current kind of nerd out areas are machine learning and data. So I've really been blessed. I have this project that kind of combines app dev and data, and now I get to share it. So the last thing I'll say about myself is I love nature. So I just got up to the Adirondacks Mountains. If you've never been there, you're welcome. Free vacation planning. It's northern New York. It's beautiful. That was just last weekend. It's like gorgeous. The other one's Banff, Canada, also another great place if you like mountains and nature. So today I just want to do 4 things. The first is, and we've spoken this already, kind of about the potential power in data and to really start to think in ways that harnesses that, because I think it can help humanity in many different ways, but I also think it can help each one of us in this room, whether we're a technologist, an agilist, whatever you are, entrepreneur, academic, the ability to solve problems with data, I think it's a huge opportunity. The second is I want to share with you my really hands-on experience from the pains of doing this at Wendy's over the last year, and just all those pain points that go with learning a new framework. The third is I want to introduce you to Google's offering of analytics tools. They just rebranded it. It now goes under the moniker of Google Marketing Platform. So you'll see that language if you Google it and you're looking looking for resources. And then I want to leave you with some resources so that whether it's just a side project website that you want to install Google Analytics on, or it's an enterprise, very robust solution, I really think Google Analytics is a go-to tool that gives you a lot for free and is very flexible. So the potential power in data. A few of the examples I really like to think about when I think about data. One is in the banking industry or in the credit industry, you have fraud detection. So for a long time, that was a very expensive endeavor. If you were to actually detect fraud, you'd hire tons of people to go through these logs and look at anomalies. And people are limited in their time and their brain power. But one of the neat data machine learning applications was that we were able to look at past data sets where fraud was identified and train up models. So now we just say, hey, why don't we take the 20% most likely cases of fraud and put our human team on that? So all of a sudden you've cut your expenses by 4/5. So that's one interesting application of using the power inherent in data. Another is in the insurance industry. Anyone from Columbus here? So you've heard of Root. I mean, they're using, I don't know anything from the inside, so this might be wrong, but I'm a policyholder, and they claim that they're using my data that they took from my driving for three weeks before offering me the policy to actually give me a better rate, not just based on my zip code and my general demographics, like you're a young white male that probably will get in an accident or something like that, kind of traditional insurance markers and generalities, but actually using specific data points to both save me money and to make a smarter policy. I have a friend that works at another more traditional insurance company, but he went in and their data team was able to identify some things and save the company $10 million in their first 3 months. So it is interesting. The last example I'll mention comes from the airline industry. I thought this was fascinating. So it's really expensive whenever airlines have to delay flights because they have to give out vouchers, there's blowback, all that stuff. So there was one machine learning application where they studied the parts on planes and say that there's a safe failure point where a part might fail or something might go wrong. It's not catastrophic to, people aren't dying, but it's going to cause a delay. So say that they just, as a rule of thumb, they said, hey, we're just going to push a part 60% because we don't want to hit that failure because it's so expensive for us. Well, they use machine learning to identify for the different parts on a plane what that failure point is, and they were able to get closer to that failure point while still being safe and saving a lot of money. So I thought that was fascinating. And then Myspace, selling hamburgers. So a famous marketer once said, half of the money I spend on advertising is wasted. The trouble is, I don't know which half. He was a famous marketer from the late 1800s. And a lot of marketing departments, there was a lot of creativity and a lot of gut feeling for a long time. If you've seen Mad Men, like the creative agency, it's like, you're just making this up, right? And in convincing clients that this is the way to go. But enter the age of digital marketing. So literally, we really don't have an excuse anymore for that to be the case. However, there are a lot of companies that don't have the analytics in place so that we can know. Wendy's is one of those companies. So I work with a product owner, and he came from healthcare background that had robust analytics in place. He came to Wendy's and found the digital space did not have much by the way of a robust analytics. So he saw the opportunity and said, we're going to implement Google Analytics to give us good feedback so that we can actually track our marketing spend. So we might spend 10 million on this ad, and because we have it integrated to our analytics platform, we'll actually be able, the goal is that we'll actually be able to tell how much that spend actually made or lost the company. So that's the power of digital marketing, that you really can connect the spend to whatever outcome you're trying to drive, whether that's user retention, whether that's user acquisition, whether that's increasing a cart, the total checkout value for your users. So Wendy's, where the digital data is fresh, never frozen. Anyone know that we are giving away free Dave singles in the month of September? Well, apparently our marketing needs to ratchet it up. If you're on Twitter, they went crazy. So follow us on Twitter. Just to give you an idea of what the user experience is, I'm going to show you our mobile platform. just to show you kind of what our checkout funnel is. So we have 4 platforms. We have iOS and Android, which look very similar in the user experience. We have a web app, so you can actually order Wendy's through your web browser. I know this is something you've always wanted to do. Do it tonight. If you do it tonight, don't laugh at me. And then we also have a Kiosk platform. The Kiosk, it's a web app wrapped in Node WebKit and then deployed to a Microsoft box just behind a nice little kiosk-y thing. So if you're ever in an airport or near a college campus, I know Ohio State has them. I wouldn't be surprised if maybe down here near campus they have it and you can order that way. So this is our app. You can also order on the mobile app. You kind of start your order, you pick a place, you pick your pickup method. You could pick dine-in, drive-through, carry-out. I'm going to dine in today. And then you're taken to our nice main menu. You have a little campaign up here. I'm just going to go traditional, go for the Dave single. Add it to my bag here. They're trying to upsell me to a combo. I'm going to deny it. Resist its psychological warfare. It's hard to sleep with myself. OK, I'm also going to get a Southwest avocado chicken sandwich. Add that. And then I'm going to go to my cart and choose a payment method. OK, and then complete the checkout here. I'm actually going to use my saved card. And then some Wendy's is making my order, and I'm not going to pick it up. Just kidding. It's our test lab. So that's kind of the user flow of our app. I just want to give you a background so we're not just talking about analytics events and you fall asleep. So what was the motivation at Wendy's for our new analytics platform? So literally, it was just a conversation with someone on the board of directors that our product owner was talking to. And he said, it would really be great to know the answer to this question. Do we sell more Dave singles as an a la carte standalone object or a product or as a combo? And we literally could not answer that question. It seems very simple, right? So we had a third-party analytics vendor that was both very expensive and not implemented well, and even implemented wrongly. So marketing was kind of making bad decisions on bad data. So our legacy event tracking system, all it gave us was this information. It gave us the total quantity of the checkout, the total revenue of your cart, if it had any coupons or offers, fulfillment type, like drive-in pickup, and then affiliation, like what a restaurant it was. And it answered these simple questions. How many items in my bag? What offers are used in all the transactions? What's the most popular transaction total price? And what order is associated with a purchase? But that's literally all it gave us. And we were paying, you don't even want to know, like hundreds of thousands of dollars for this. So we looked at just comparing 2 analytics events, the purchase event, capturing the data around that, comparing the old vendor to the new Google Analytics solution. This is all the information. This is only the first page. This is all the information that Google passes to the analytics platform when you have a purchase. So you have your cart level info. I'm not even going to read it all because it's all the stuff that you would ever want to know and more. And then product info. On every product that you check out with, you have all these fields that you can pass information. And in addition, here are just a sampling of the questions that you can answer with that data. So again, without boring you, we can answer a heck lot of business-driven decisions because there's more data there to query. So what did our architecture look like? So at Wendy's, again, we have in digital 4 platforms. We have our iOS app, our Android app, our web app, and our kiosk. So we wanted a unified analytics solution so that we could reason about the sales and consumer behavior across all 4 platforms consistently. So with the Google products, sorry, this is kind of dark, but Google Analytics is their main analytics product. Google Tag Manager is a way, you think of it as like a content management system, but for analytics. And then Firebase, we'll go into that in a little bit, is a big service that Google's starting to push more and more with mobile. So we used Firebase with mobile to forward events through Google Tag Manager, which ended up in Google Analytics. On web, we went straight to Google Tag Manager, then to Google Analytics, and Kiosk the same way. What Google Tag Manager allowed us to do was it gave the marketing department a very nice GUI that they could configure all the tags. And it also let us make changes to the analytics events outside of the software delivery lifecycle. So anyone here, if you've worked in software, and if you haven't, I'll let you in on a little secret. Things take forever. It takes like 1,000 times as long as you think. Like a one-line little change in this string, oh, it's going to take like 6 months to get to production. So one of the genius things of this Google Tag Manager is that it would allow you to say, oh, I want to change this analytic event without having to go through that whole cycle, which is many people and lots of pain. But we had legacy analytics code in our code base, and we still needed to support that for 4 months because we still had the subscription, and there were other people in our company who were using that. And we also wanted to have good programming practice, right? And we wanted a nice, loosely coupled analytics platform. So the old analytics code was tightly bound, and it was just strewn about our code base. It wasn't really separated out. So one of the strategies our team came up with was having an analytics manager. And what that allowed us to do was to have a common API that we came up with just all the events like track purchase, track checkout, track add to cart. And then you could subscribe any kind of implementation. So we had our old vendor implementation, and then we had our Google Analytics. But say in 5 years, someone comes along and they're like, hey, Google's gouging us. We're going to go with Adobe or something like that. I know, right? They would be able to just hook into that. So at least from an application development standpoint, we were able to improve the code by implementing a kind of manager pattern. This is some Java from our Android app, and you can just see it registers the data handlers. We had 2 up there. The third-party vendor, which I won't name, but is up there. And here is just the UI code where just to show you where our manager would hook in. So this is the code from the activity that powers this UI view. And you see we just call MA Analytics Core and track digital offer redemption event. And we pass in the data, and then it would go to whoever's subscribed to that, whether it's our third-party vendor, the legacy vendor, or if it's Google. So in addition, I talked a little bit about that purchase event and what replacing that purchase event would do, but that was just one event. Google offers a feature called Enhanced Ecommerce, and it's a series of 9 e-commerce events, product impression, product view, checkout steps. And if you implement these, you get a nice dashboard view where you can see the drop-off of your users in the checkout funnel. So on the left, we see there's people who, this is all sessions, all user sessions. And the next one, you see how many people have actually interacted with a product by viewing it. And then you see the next one is how many people of those people have added a product to the cart. And the next one is how many people have actually got to that checkout screen where I'm configuring the payment options. And then the last is who is actually converted and made a transaction. So in e-commerce, this is so important because you constantly want to fine-tune your funnel so that ideally, it would look like a waterfall where or not a waterfall, it would just be 100% across way. You want to convert everyone that comes to your page. So people are always kind of trying to fine tune those steps. But before, we did not have this visibility. After we implemented Google Analytics, we were able to see that. Another thing, this is a future thing for us, but it's on the future radar. With Google Analytics, once it's implemented, you can implement A/B testing. So A/B testing is just the general idea that you can do empirical-based tests on different user experiences. So for example, a very simple example that you see up here, you'd have a control experience. Say our checkout button on the Wendy's app is red right now. Say the variation, the experiment, our hypothesis is going to be, what if that button was a different color? How would that affect the psychological experience of the user? Would they be more tempted to crave that Dave's Double at midnight and order it, or maybe not? And again, kind of before analytics, that was a gut call. Well, I like this color, but I just think it looks good. But now when we have analytics in place, we can actually make empirically driven experiments. So what we would do, you could do this a whole host of ways. You could do this live with all of your audience. You could say 50% of our users are going to get the green button and 50% are going to get the red. And for 1 week, we're going to study that and see if there's a statistically significant difference. say the green button yields 3 times as much revenue as the red button per user, then we're probably going to go with that green button, even if the whole lab likes red, right? Because there's actually empirical evidence that actually helped convert more people to the goal. So you can apply. It's a very powerful concept. This is a simple. Obviously, we're not just going to do it with buttons. We're going to do it with checkout steps. Maybe 11 steps is not efficient. Maybe it should be 3. Maybe people are overwhelmed with too much information. But again, we can have a hypothesis, and empirical users, real live users, can actually prove that to be true, or prove to be false. Another thing on our path at Wendy's that we want to do with analytics, once a baseline of analytics is in place, we want to do localization, which is just the concept that if I'm driving by a Wendy's here in Cincinnati and they have a special offer going on, maybe they have like some special Chipotle chicken sandwich, I want to be able to know about that. But I don't want to push that all across America because it would be frustrating to people if they're like, yeah, I'm going to get this Chipotle chicken sandwich. And then I go and they're like, oh, we don't have that. And then you alienate your customers. So analytics is a baseline that allows you to do things like localization and actually have an individualized user experience. So I want to introduce you to Ryan Healthiest Gosling. Maybe you've heard of him. Apparently, the word on the street is he's trying to be healthy. So if he was to go to Wendy's, turns out he would go after that taco salad, and we would try to upsell, suggestive sell him for an honest green tea because it's very healthy. And since he was being so good, he would probably complete his purchase with a Frosty, because he got the water with his taco salad. So and you could see his personalized little Google ad on here. It says, "Looking for lunch? Taco salad is waiting." So he has a personalized Google advertising click ad there at the top of his search bar. And then we have Tina Baconator Smith. She's still waiting to break out in the actress arena, but turns out, contrary to popular belief, she's the Baconator's biggest fan, and so she doesn't she would go away if you offered her the taco salad. She would say do you know me? I am the Bacon Queen, and so we do know her though. Thanks to analytics, we actually have a track record. Wow, whenever she goes, Baconator's her sandwich. So we're going to offer her the Baconator fries. We're going to offer her that free offer. And so you could see when she's coming to her Google search bar, it's going to say, "Looking for lunch? The Baconator's waiting." So we're able to actually offer users personalized experience based on who they are. Even beyond actual personalizations, you could do segmentations. Apparently, one of Wendy's highest converting subgroups are late night gamers. They're one of our highest revenue producers. So you can actually target them by behavior and then say, we're going to give you an even better experience. Or if it's the parent going through the drive-thru picking up a fast dinner for their family, you could target, oh, hey, maybe buy 2 meals, get 2 free, or something like that, where you can make a better user experience, which helps the user, and it also leads to higher conversions. So that's enough about Big Brother and creepy personalization. I know it's always a fine line between okay, I want it to be a good experience, but do I really want you to know that I like the Baconator? I definitely like the Baconator. Okay, so that's kind of what we've been doing at Wendy's with analytics in general. It's kind of a 10,000-foot view. I want to take time to actually go in detail over these 3 tools: Google Analytics, Google Tag Manager, and Firebase, so that you feel confident to know kind of what's out there, what you're able to do with them, and where to go from here if you're going to implement them. So Google Analytics and enhanced e-commerce. So one of the really standout benefits is it gives you a complete overview of what is going on in your application, whether it's just a website or whether it's a mobile app. You're going to really know everything the user's doing. We'll look at some dashboards, but one of the reasons we selected it is it allowed us from one dashboard to see what was going on and aggregate across iOS, Android, Kiosk, and web. So it allows you to kind of do those comparative analyses. Insights. So Google is baking in machine learning into it, and it's kind of in beta, but they keep rolling out new features all the time. So they have these 2 dashboards where one is they'll track users and they'll say these people are the most likely to convert, and they'll make recommendations on what you should do to help them to convert to a sale. They also show you, this is not so much in our business, but in other businesses where maybe the ticket value is higher of a product. They'll show you which customers have a high revenue potential based on their past actions. Like, hey, maybe they're going to buy that $500 refrigerator or something. But they run it through their machine learning algorithms and give you some suggestions on who to target because of past behavior. They also have these abnormal activity alerts, which is really nice actually, because say something technically goes wrong and the analytics just go quiet or something, or you're getting 10 times as many hits, it'll give you an alert and say, hey, just to let you know, this is like way standard deviation 10 out there. Like something's going on, you should probably check this out. Like either people, I don't know, zombies attacked or something. But they give you those activity alerts, which it's another vote of confidence that like, hey, I have one more thing telling me if my system's not implemented right for some reason. It's also integrated. Google has a really good suite of advertising products. I haven't played around too much with this one. Display and Video 360 is a new thing that you can actually get TV ads, radio ads, podcast ads, and you can buy it through their marketplace, but it links into your Google Analytics account. So you can actually do some of that tracking that I was saying where you can actually spend money on something and then really track direct user response in a certain window. You can also link it up with Google Ads, AdSense, which is if your product generates money through showing ads, AdMob, Ad Manager. Data Studio is new. I really want to play with it. It is like a Power BI or Tableau, if you've ever used those tools, except online. And you can basically link it to your analytics account and make customized dashboards. You don't have to be a technical person. You don't have to be someone who touches code for that. And then I mentioned A/B testing. Optimize is the web framework for that. And then Firebase allows you to do A/B testing with mobile. It's also flexible. It's really, really fast, and it's free. There's shareable reports. So for security, you can share a report with someone and not worry about them like having all the data in your company. And we didn't use this, but this is a neat feature to have. There's configuration APIs. So if for some reason you're dealing with a very large problem or you need to do remote configurations, you can actually control the configuration of your setup with APIs. So here's some of the reports. There's audience reports, advertising reports, acquisition reports, behavior reports. We'll walk through some so that actually shows you what's going on. There's conversion reports, real-time reporting, user flow reporting, data freshness, unsample reports, and roll-up reporting. Two things I'll point out. One is it's free except for the features that have that 360 only. 360 is their enterprise edition. Data freshness, so just a word on that. So once you get over, I think it's 500,000 sessions in an analytic query, they will automatically sample it because it's such a large compute time and it takes a lot of resources. So those statistic sampling, which gives you a pretty good idea, but it might vary just a little bit. If you have the enterprise one, you can go to up to 100 million sessions before the automatic sampling kicks in. And then you can also set, you can say this search, I always want it to be a true search and use all the data if you have that paid edition one. But the search might take a little longer if you're dealing with lots of data. And then this roll-up reporting is it gives you the ability to combine reports. So this is kind of like high-level view of what's going on with the Google Analytics architecture. So you can feed data in many different ways. There's 2 JavaScript libraries that allow you to feed data into their system. There's the mobile SDKs. And there's also something called the measurement protocol, which you can use that for any kind of server-side or point-of-sales systems. You can manually send hits to an API, and you can integrate there. So say at Wendy's I was offering, and we actually do this, we offer coupon offers. And you might want to manually redeem it. So say I manually redeem it, and so it's outside the flow of our digital app. So okay, I know they pressed it to redeem it, but how do I know they actually really checked out? Well, you could integrate with our point of sale so that when the cashier pushes that button and enters that code, that sends it to analytics. Right now, we haven't done that because there's some complications with our point of sale system, but that is something that is supported by Google Analytics, so that's good to know about. And then everything comes through. The data sits down there at the query engine. If you have the paid edition, you can export it to BigQuery, which is Google's big database, machine learning friendly. So that's something we have not done yet. So how do I set up Google Analytics? If you just want to get started, if you want to get started with the web, it's pretty easy. There's 2 JavaScript libraries to do this with. Analytics is the old one. They're depreciating that soon, so don't use that. Use the G tag. You just put a snippet in at the top of your website, and Google will go out and download some of this analytics code, and it will be looking for what you push onto this global variable, G tag. And whenever you push stuff on there, it will forward the event to your Google Analytics account. Say I wanted to forward a page view. Here's some of the information I would push on there, page title, page path, and then that would show up in my Google Analytics dashboard. It gets a little more, if you want to pass your own custom data, there's this concept of events. Events have 4 slots that you can put things in: a label, a value, a category, and an event name. That's just how Google passes information, so you can have as many events as you want. And here's the list of, if you really want the nice enhanced e-commerce dashboards, you have to implement product impressions, clicks, detail views, additions to cart, removal from cart, promotion impressions, promotion clicks, checkout steps, options, track purchases, and refunds. And that will give you the whole benefit of the enhanced e-commerce funnel. So here's an example of an enhanced e-commerce event. So you can see there's a lot more data being passed. This is the purchase event. So in the purchase event, there's some cart level things being passed, like the value, the total value, the tax, the currency, and then you have an array of products. So you just pass that information in there. And however it fits into your app's architecture, you can do it according to that. In Google Analytics, how do they break down their account structure? So they have these 3 concepts. They have the high-level concept of an account. They have the middle tier of a property. And then they have the nested tier of a view. So in a Google Analytics, you can have as many accounts as you want. It's often a strategy. You'll separate it out for security and for permissions reasons. Our architecture has development account, and we have our 4 platforms. So we have Android, iOS, Kiosk, Web. And then so that we could get an aggregate view of all of them, we have another one called Digital Portfolio. One of the limitations of the free version is that you can only have 10 million hits per property per month. So that's something to be aware of. And that's why we did it that way, so that we could get as much out of the free version as possible. 10 million sounds like a lot, but once you have a big user base and a hit is just any of those events, it adds up really fast. Here's a look at what the dashboards look like. So this is the product view, and this is some dev data, so it's not real. But our robots like the Dave Single. So you can see there are a lot of different dashboards on the left. Every report is pretty highly customizable. You could do pie charts, you could do bar charts, and then you can also add different secondary dimensions. So for example, here on our products, if I want to add category, I could sort by category. But I can add all sorts of secondary dimensions that would allow me to slice and dice this data. So some of the, I think there's like 100 different dimensions I can sort by. But they'll help find commonly used ones, or you can search by different reports. One really good feature I found is that you can save reports. So since there's like hundreds of views that they give you, say you're going to give a presentation and you don't want to click through 8 things to get that perfect report you want, you could save the report, and then there's a place where you can go to that immediately. So like for our sprint reviews, when we're doing work on analytics, we'll save all our reports so that we don't, everyone doesn't groan at us like, why are you setting up the reports right now? It has an export feature, which is really nice. You can export reports to PDF for easy sharing. You could do it to Google Sheets. You can get the data behind it through Excel, a CSV file. And then last but not least, you can share it. So it has a direct email share, so if you need to share that out. And it has good fine-grained security on it, so you can say, I want this link active for 6 months, I want it active for 2 days, I want it active for 48 hours. You have control over all of that. So in e-commerce, there's a concept that's important called product list. So product list is this notion that when I encounter a product, let's say a Dave Single in this case, I'm going to encounter it in different places. I can encounter it in an email coupon ad. I can encounter it on the main menu of my app under Hamburgers. I can encounter it in the promotion slot. And the idea of list in e-commerce is so important because they're going to look at which lists are most profitable. So say Dave Single actually converts 80% of the time when it's in my, a recommender slot. So you know the recommender slots on Amazon, right? It's like, hey, you bought this, you probably want this, this, and this. And so if that recommender slot is a higher conversion rate, you're going to want to put that in a more prominent area of your app. So product list kind of gives you that insight across all of your products. And these are our product list names. Most of them are submenus, values, but other ones are like your cart, if you view things from a cart and add additional things. So you can see going across, it's neat. You can track. Right now, we don't have product list views implemented, so there's a bunch of zeros. But you can see like how many people viewed, or how many versus how many people say. Let's see. Look at that top, the bakery. So 11 people added bakery products to the cart, and it will tell you the percentage of conversion. Like this many people converted. This data is a little dirty because it was from our dev account. One of the other reports that I find very useful for both debugging but also for the business is that they can look per user how someone acted action by action in your app. So this is a snapshot from a user who this morning, for some reason, they're on the Wendy's app at 7:09 a.m. No judgment. There is breakfast at some of our locations. The flagship one in Dublin, if you're up there. At 7:09, you could see that there was a product detail view, and then you can drill in and see that information. And then they added to cart, then a product detail view. So, and this goes on. So you can go by user, by session over history. So you can actually have a really in-depth, like, oh, this is how someone used my app. It wasn't how I thought. So they went through this flow instead of that flow. So that gives UX people a little bit of insight into how maybe to design those user experiences. There's a neat behavior report on site speed. So this is actually a huge thing in customer churn. And if your site's slow, people are just going to leave. Like they aren't even going to give it the second click or the time of day. So there's this neat out-of-the-box feature. Once you implement the baseline, you don't even need to implement the enhanced e-commerce events. And it will tell you by browser what is the average page load time. You can even go by country. So it's interesting. This is for the Google merchandise store. So they have a lot of data from all around the world, and you can kind of see like maybe whose infrastructure, like are these times affected by infrastructure? Maybe the internet's slow in another country, so I shouldn't freak out about this country being slow because like the tech is there, and the software is the best practices, but maybe the infrastructure isn't there. You can also drill down by page. So this is a neat view called speed suggestions. And what it will do is say, hey, these are some of your worst pages as far as loading times. And there's a little linked page speed suggestion to the right. You see those hyperlinked 8 total, 7 total. They will actually automatically run that URL through Google's speed tool that anyone can use for their site. And it will give you, it will pop up a new screen, and it will analyze it. And then it will give you actual actionable things, like you should minify your CSS, all these things. So it's actually really nice because it gives you a checklist of, oh, these are the kind of things I should be doing to improve this part of my site. So I thought that was a very nice feature. One of the things that our product owner and our marketing department really likes is this conversion report. It helps report on, again, it's kind of that from beginning of my app to conversion, where's the drop off? So you can see here, out of just under 3,000 people, about 2,000 drop off on the way in to our billing and shipping step. And then 207 drop off before payment, 134 drop off before review, and then 38 drop off. So if they get to that second stage, they're pretty guaranteed to make a purchase. This is what it's telling you. And you can also see where they exited to, like what URLs. So maybe you had something that was distracting. It was a good thought, right? But it's in the wrong place. So that might tell you, hey, don't put that flashy click ad right before they were going to complete their purchase. Put it after. So those are the kind of questions and insights that this might deliver. This is another interesting visualization. I haven't dug into all this, but I really like this. This also tells you drop-off. And it has a really neat, that first stage on the left, you can configure that by a lot of different dimensions. So it can be source, where they're coming from, but it can also be like what products they have in their cart. So you can slice that out and ask some interesting questions about drop-off and if it's correlated to any other kind of user activity. I'm going to skip the dashboard demo for right now because I want to make it through Firebase and GTM. So Firebase, I know there was an awesome talk on Firebase setup earlier, but Firebase is a great thing. Spend some time watching some YouTube videos about it. It's huge. We are just using the analytics offering. It automatically logs a lot of stuff for you once you install the SDKs on your mobile apps. We use it just for our mobile apps, for analytics. For analytics, Firebase is strictly mobile. It doesn't do web analytics, and we don't need it to. It integrates with all Google and third-party tags, which is nice. There's good granular security. There's really awesome preview and debug tests, real-time, a real-time view that I'll show you. And this allows us to forward values, events, and parameters onto Google Analytics. So what does the setup look like? Well, in Android, we just add it to our dependencies, install the SDK. And then you go over to the Firebase console, and you just click Add New Project. You start your project, go to the settings, and then you connect your app to it. And once you have that all set up, so Firebase Analytics is actually a separate repository from Google Analytics. I don't know why Google is doing this. They haven't really shared their master plan with their cloud offerings, at least not to me. So you hook up Firebase. Here's the Java Android code, and you can see I'm pushing just a simple event, a simple select content event. And there are predefined parameters that I push with that. In this case, item ID, item name, content type with this select content event. But I can add my own unique parameters with that. I can add 25 custom parameters per event and 50 total. And then they have this notion of user properties. So I might say like age or whatever you want to know about your user, you could persist that data. This is what an enhanced e-commerce event looks like. It's a little more data heavy, just like the other one. You're just putting all that data in, but in a way that Firebase likes. Here's that real-time debug view. So you can watch users in real time and see what they're doing, and you can drill into that data. You can see the actual parameters passed through. So like when you're setting up a new event, there's so many kind of moving pieces. Sometimes it is a little inane, it's crazy. You're like, I'm losing my mind. What's not working? It's good. You can actually go here and say, OK, at least my mobile is forwarding it to Firebase. Why it's not getting to Google Analytics, I'm not sure, but at least it's at Firebase. So there's just that detailed parameter view. If they got the Dave single, you could see the name, the item variant, the a la carte value, the price, the quantity. So where does Google Tag Manager fit into all of this? So to recap, for mobile, we have Firebase, which has some analytics data in it. And now we need to actually get it to Google Analytics. So we're going to use Google Tag Manager so that marketing can use that friendly GUI to do that. So Google Tag Manager is a free service. And instead of, on your web apps, instead of installing that, that little code snippet, you're going to install this container snippet from Google Tag Manager. And what that is going to do is it is going to go out, every time this code hits, it's going to go out to Google Tag Manager and say, what tags have you configured? And it's going to inject them into your app real time. So it's really powerful, like a content management system, right? If you've worked with content management system, it's nice. You get the nicety of that dynamic change, but you also get the danger. So you have to be careful because it can change your app. And so if you don't implement it right, you could inject JavaScript that breaks your app. So you just have to have a proper understanding of its power. This is just the setup snippet that allows it to do that. You put where the red GTM lettering is, you would put your GTM account number in there. And in Android, you just add a dependency to get it working. And Google Tag Manager, the structure is a little simpler. You have accounts, and then you have containers. A container is where all your analytics tags are defined. This is your main dashboard inside of Google Tag Manager. So you'll see some main things. You'll see what version you're on. It versions, every time you change it, it tracks it, and there's a nice history. So if you ever want to revert to, so say I just had page views, a simple page view implementation, and then I said I want to implement add to cart and purchase. So in my second version, I did that. But say something catastrophic went wrong and my app is broken now, and I'm not sure why. I can, with a click of a button, roll back to the first implementation without losing any of that work. But with a click of a button, I can do version management. This is what that version history looks like. So you can see, you can title your versions, say what you were changing, and you can export them. All of your versions are representable as a JSON, so it's very nice. You can just export and import. So when you're working with other developers, that makes it really easy to pass around configurations. Here's the history on the version. You can see what specifically changed in each version. So Google Tag Manager has a powerful tool called the data layer. The data layer is basically a global JavaScript variable called data layer. And you should, right, they should call it like layer data or something to mess with you. But you push on, basically it's a listener. So Google Tag Manager is always listening to this data layer object. And when you push stuff on it, you can configure it to fire off things. So here you see just a generic event. We're passing an event called event name. So let's apply this to a real life situation. So in the add to cart tag, I'm going to configure it, and I'm going to say it's going to be an event. I'm going to pass some values through, and I'm going to trigger it when the add to cart event comes onto the data layer. So here's the trigger, and that event name, add to cart, I set that to add to cart. And so every time add to cart gets pushed on that data layer, this is going to fire off an enhanced e-commerce add to cart. So here's what I'm going to push in my app code to the data layer. I'm going to push this JavaScript object with an event of add to cart. And right there, that's where the magic is. Because here, I define my trigger, the event name, to be add to cart. So it is listening on the event key. It's listening on that event key to say, whenever that value for event changes to add to cart, I want you to fire off this tag. And then it fires it off to Google Analytics. So that's kind of how Google Tag Manager allows you to have that control of, do I want this tag fired or not? And you can toggle that on and off, again, without changing your software. So you have the analytics code in your software ready to send it if you so choose with Google Tag Manager. But you have that granular control. And you can even change values, too, with Google Tag Manager. So this is, I just want to show you a parallel example from the mobile. The only difference with mobile is, so the data layer is a JavaScript exclusive thing. It's a global variable that you push stuff onto. So this is kind of where, at least in my mind, the Firebase thing makes sense. So Firebase, essentially, for mobile, is like what the data layer is for web. So you're pushing stuff to Firebase Analytics. And you can actually read stuff off of that with Google Tag Manager and then forward it to your Google Analytics account. So even though some of it seems redundant, you trigger events from Google Tag Manager off of your Firebase Analytics. And again, it's here we set an event name listener trigger for contains add to cart. And as soon as we see in our Firebase debug console the add to cart event come across, that's when that Google Analytics, I would go over to my Google Analytics dashboard and I would see that event hit. So just some challenges. What challenges did we come across at Wendy's when we were implementing this? One was when we had our kiosk system, we wanted to use Google Tag Manager with all of our 4 systems so that marketing would have a unified experience to implement what they wanted. And we had it implemented, we had the code implemented, but we were not seeing any of the hits in the Google Analytics dashboard for our kiosk. We looked at the network traffic. It was pulling down the initial analytics code from Google. We tried it with both just pure Google Analytics, and we also tried it with a GTM container. And both times it would pull it down, but it wouldn't send it out. So we're thinking, it's got to be like some networking security rules we have. So we're going after that, and it turns out it was none of that. There was this obscure. It was literally in one of the last deepest pages of documentation. There's these things called tasks, which are configuration, like universal level configurations for Google Analytics, but they don't really talk about them that much. And there's one task called check protocol task, and apparently by default it's on. And what that does is block any hit coming to Google Analytics that's not from an HTTP protocol. And since this was wrapped, it's like comes from a file protocol. I don't even know all the details. But so it was seeing the hit, but it was internally, the analytics code was just saying, don't fire it. So we finally found this, which there was a lot of rejoicing. After like a week of like reading crazy QA things. So one of the criticisms was their documentation, it's so large and there's so much to learn that sometimes it feels like they haven't really said, okay, here are the real important things, like that little task configuration. It isn't always organized, it seems like, as well. Because Google, like their cloud offerings and their analytics offerings are evolving, there sometimes is conflicting documentation, or at least it's obscure and you're kind of like, you have to do a little POCing to really find out how it works under the covers. So yeah, some important things are in footnotes. Case in point, this week we just found out that the product category field, we found out this little note in documentation that we've never really read before. It said, if you use a / delimiter, you can specify up to 5 levels of hierarchy, which means you get 5 custom dimensions to like, and that would have like solved 2 of our problems that we've spent like 4 weeks on. I know it sounds like archaic and stuff, but so it's like, that would have been really nice to know like up in the front part of your docs. So I know it's a big thing, so we can't really criticize them too much, but. So I know that's a lot. I'm sorry if it was like drinking out of a fire hose. I'll leave it there and see if there's any questions. But thanks so much for your time. And I got cards up front. Oh, connect with me, Twitter, Gmail, and GitHub. I'm going to post this hopefully tomorrow online, and I'll try to have the documentation and some other blogs. There are a few bloggers that I found really helpful I'll put on there too. So thanks so much for your time.